Hello, everyone. Corey here coming in to do a bit of a reading and update for this full moon in Taurus that we have coming up. And so, hmm, so, hmm, this full moon is kind of sitting in the middle of a swamp, but it is a beautiful reflection. The swampiest of fields can look beautiful with the right light shining up on it. And if it's imitation light, it just looks overexposed or it's just not right. Shine divine light and everything looks so much better. And so if we can see everything through divine light and through our divine and through divine eyes, is that we can see not just the beauty, but we can see without judgment. We can see what needs to be done without criticizing. It is like helping someone without walking in and just criticizing them to death before you actually decide you're going to help them. So you trigger um every ounce of insecurity, pass every go on every trigger warning they have, and then you want them to be relaxed and calm in your presence. We often do that with children. Too often we do that with children. Too often we tell children that uh that they're not enough before we beat them down before we boost them up. That has been happening for generations, been happening throughout time. We're making some leeway in that, but a lot of the changes that are here is in trying to perfect a child and not trying to help a child to evolve in who they are. It's trying to recreate who you thought you should be or who you think they should be. And children don't really work that way. And so the little inner child inside of you would be no different. The same with, I just want to say, like, I'll use my painting that I'm painting behind me. It would be so easy for me to go in and just and paint what I think is there. But instead, all I have is this muted hair and whatever else is happening. I don't know what is really happening there. I don't even know what it really is yet. There's a face. I think there's a face. And so as I paint, every bit of my insecurities and every bit of my self-judgment kind of tries to creep in. And it goes, well, that's garbage. That you're not a painter. You're not good at that. You're using the wrong medium. You're using cheap paint, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. That'll never be any good. And so all of those conversations have to be neutralized before the full image will come. And through each stroke, that communication continues, and then all of a sudden the light, the the communication that is more kinder, more compassionate, begins to speak back, and it gets louder, and then the other voice gets neutralized, and through that the painting becomes what it is. It becomes imperfectly perfect. It becomes what channel has asked me to create. And all my job is to create what is being asked to create, and not about who it's going to please, who's going to buy it, because they're not for sale. The best parts of you should never be for sale. We should never be selling your soul to just be liked, to just be validated, to just be enough. The overemphasis on how powerful the shadow people, the shadow beings have become, and how there is such a determination to not be left behind, that some people are not using discernment in what they are experiencing. Is, I just got to jump on board. I just got to get into this conversation. I just got to be a part of this. This conversation is happening. So this has to be happening So we're not listening, we're not seeing through the eyes of the light, not seeing through the eyes of the divine. Our hearts are not operating from the divine all the time. Whereas this moon is bringing about a big shift. This full moon is bringing us through this energy shift that is just saying to us, it is saying to all of us, get your feet on the ground and look into the eyes of the divine, to see through imitation, to see truth, to see through our own illusions, to begin to see truth. And when we begin to see truth, we get to see deception. We get to see many things that are unfolding in a way that just says, look how easy it is to convince a crowd. Get one believing, all masses will follow suit. Put one into a state of fear, and everyone will see it. If we take a swamp and we shine an imitation light upon it, there will be a desire to walk into the swamp and sink in the swamp. If we shine true light, it shows us there is a swamp. It shows us that a swamp is a swamp, and a swamp will sink us. The swamp will go down, but we can stand on the edge and see the reflection of the light shining. And we won't see a filtered view. We'll see a true view. We'll see a true reflection. And so much in life right now is inviting us to drop those filters, those reflections, and stop playing into the perfection of things. We see it everywhere. We see it in our videos. We see it in our videos need to look like this. You need to look like that. But a whole part of making it raw and real was that we weren't the programmed news. We weren't the perfectly orchestrated movies, the theatrical views. We were human beings, everyday people posting everyday videos who have gifts, who have things about them. They're, I can't act, I can't play, I can't do that. It just, if I did, it would go against who I was, because I'm not very good at acting. And people who are good at acting are freaking good at it. They can play that role. But then sometimes if you're acting long enough, it is very difficult to be authentic. It is very difficult to just be yourself, because you chase this perfection. And because we have been taught now to chase perfection, we're getting lost. And and that is kind of where this moon is. This is where the light of this moon is taking us. And I don't know why. Today I pulled out, this was one of, okay. So I don't know how many people know this about Colette Baron Reid's cards, but there's this deck, and this was a deck of cards from, I don't even know how long ago. But it was PC Cast and Colette Baron Reid. It was one of the decks of cards that I freaking loved. Why do I love them? They're just simple. They really are just simple. There's the pictures are incredible, but the cards themselves are simple. They're just very to the point. I love them. And today I felt the need to pull them out and bring them in and use alongside of the everyday goddesses, which are equally as simple, which are my deck. And so I wanted to add these in for you. I would say, we don't know what's best for people, but what I do know is that if we guide people home, if we help people open up their hearts to themselves, is that they will begin to remember. They'll remember what it is they like, don't like. They will begin to see what truly is there in front of them, beyond what is possible. And so let's just see what the wisdom gives us. We have obedience. And then we have meditation. And I'm going to go with the 3 cards and playful. And we're going to go with the underneath of the deck. I want to turn them around. We have listening. We have listening. And I always say, one of the things that I have learned along the way is that we all have an inner therapist, not your personal therapist, not your psychologist, not people you work with like that, not in medical, but in spiritual. But it doesn't speak back. It teaches us about the awkwardness that we are in silence, and how we keep trying to fill up, and how we don't really want to listen. We want to keep talking, right? We want to keep talking. We're going to convince ourselves of something. We're going to be something. So we keep chattering. We keep creating more noise. And so the card that came out in the beginning is obedience. And this card, obedience, does speak about the rules, the laws, that there is that we have to learn the lays of the land, right? You have to, before you can step out into the world. So before you can, you have to learn spiritual laws before you can really understand the power of spirituality. And through the rules of spirituality is not controlling. It says, go test the waters. You will learn. You want to fall into this, you want to try to test whether or not that swamp is going to sink you. Try going walking on it, and you can tell us that, and you could be very defiant to that, going, no, it's not. That's just it's not really like that. That's just the stories people make up. That doesn't really happen. It's not going to happen to me. Just watch. And then you go and you fall and you sink into the swamp. You fall into the swamp. It's stinky. It's dirty. It's beautiful from afar to look at it. It could be absolutely beautiful. It could be mystifying. But if you're going to go into the swamp, you might need a boat. You might need a path. You might need a way around the swamp, but not to go directly into the swamp. Why would you go directly into the swamp? And why would you ruin your day? Why would you defy some of the rules and the laws that apply, that are spiritual laws? And one, it's like gravity, right? It's the things that are there. And so this is about us having to really learn, unlearn to learn, but also learning what these rules and these laws are. They don't chain us, though. They don't chain us. They teach us. They guide us. They give us opportunities to fall, to make mistakes. And those are the laws that are applying. And we're seeing so much of this kind of trying to communicate, asking us to see beyond the energy that's trying to deceive us. And that energy also comes from within. Now, the next card is meditation, which brings us back to the bottom of the deck, which is listening. Is we ask in prayer, we listen in meditation. And when we come into that place of deep listening, is that wisdom will eventually speak. So even if we test and we defy the laws, they're not going to leave us in the swamp. There's always a hand out, a hand that is reaching up. And so this is the rising up and out. These are very much about lotus flower moments. And we're coming into a time of great lotus flower moments. The card that speaks of the spirit is really speaking about, this is card 44, that we have these beautiful guides and angels, and they're playful, and they're always playing with us. They're always like laughing. They're laughing with us and not at us. They recognize that we are newbies, we're young, and we have to learn from experience. But it's inviting us to really to let go of the grip that we have gotten lost in, that we have gotten so oversensitized, so sensitive to some things and desensitized to other things. And that the thing that we are forgetting is the power of play, right down to the small children. The children want to play. The children don't want to be dressed up. The children don't want to be your puppet on a string in your videos. Your puppet don't want your puppet. Your child don't want to be, and this is like your inner child plus the children in the world. Your inner child don't want to have to be kept in competition. It don't want to be working so hard. It wants to be playful. It wants to return to the playfulness. How do we get closer to spirit? Closer to spirit is to return to childlike energy, but within our adulting self, which brings us into the power of honesty. And when we learn to be honest with ourselves, is that we begin to see what we couldn't see before, to not to defy the test, not to defy the laws, but to be observant of what's happened, to not to be such a slave to our fears, not to be so defiant, but to be wise. And to be wise allows us to use discernment. And when we use discernment, we just stop listening sometimes to the chatter, and we start to come into this place of where the voice of silence begins to communicate a greater wisdom, that there is something more. And so from the Everyday Goddess from my deck comes in the card of transformation. She is in the maiden energy, and she is in that of the fragments of you, hollow. Is that when we start to break up with those versions of ourselves that no longer align, we don't have to be the everything. We don't have to put everything back together. Is that all of those pieces are not meant to fit perfectly together. All of our experiences are not to create some perfection in life. It's for us to leave room for light to come through. Is those breaks, those breakdown, those breakthroughs, those moments that we think are breaking us are actually opening us. And when we become more open, we're now able to receive. We're not so closed down. The power of this beautiful voice that speaks to us is the age, it's the return to innocence. And we were all innocent until we were not. We were all good until someone told us we're bad. And this is where grace, this voice of grace begins to speak. And through this full moon energy, we are being invited to truly allow the voice of grace to communicate to us. And that we can be, it's like we can be in our glory and in our shining moment. And we can also be very powerful in those moments without having to be a storm. Sometimes the most powerful things is in the silence. It is on those hot sunny days when the sun is shining and there's not a breeze, when everything is tranquil and everything is quiet. But the power of the sun can move things. It can melt things. It can force what is outside to go inside, but it can also bring us to the place of where we bloom. So this moon is going to be inviting us to look at the attachments and what we are attached to. And what we are attached to is often the thing that is propelling us. So we're attached to the image, if we're attached to validation, if we're attached to fear, if we're attached to just belonging to something, if we're attached to just being a part of something, then maybe we need to look at what it is that is propelling us. And so if we're attached to a specific outcome, maybe it's time to let go of that specific outcome and trust that the universe has something even greater and more powerful and beautiful for us. And that we don't need to be in competition, and we don't have to keep fluffing things up and adding more. Less is sometimes more. And sometimes we just got to get back to the original, back to the authentic, back to seeing how it was. And remember, the laws, the spiritual laws that define us, that help us grow and evolve, are communicating more than ever right now. And they're speaking to us in such a way that says, it is time to trust the laws, to trust in something more, to trust the voice of grace. I send you much love. Have a beautiful full moon, and we'll be talking soon. Bye-bye.